Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show video for you guys, and today I'm going to be updating my top 50 players in the game list. You guys really enjoyed this last time. It's always good to keep you guys up to date, keep you knowledgeable on what cards I think you should be running, assuming the end goal of your ranked games is winning. So I want to give you the most meta, the best cards to use in my opinion. So one thing to mention real quick, this is not accounting for team boost. The list is mostly scaled for All-Star and Hall of Fame because that's where most players are. And I cannot possibly account for you having an entire Nats team with Adam Dunn. It's not realistic for most people to have, so I'm just not even going to think about it. You can also make the argument that the best team in the game does not involve a team boost anymore. It involves having the best cards in the game. So that's kind of why we're doing away with the captain boost being part of the equation as to how good these cards are. So real quick before we get into it, if this does help you structure your lineups for the rest of the year, feel free to subscribe. We're going to be updating this list over and over and over as the year goes on. So if you want to stay up to date, a like, a subscription would be appreciated. And let's get into it. So we're actually not going to start with any of these cards. We are going to start with honorable mentions. So these are guys where either I haven't used them, or I think they're just on the outside looking in, or they really need a team boost, right? Like Tome really needs a team boost. Joe Torre really needs to be on the Arenado team. Willie Castro really needs to be on the Buxton team. And then Roman Anthony looks good. Micah Bale, a lot of these team affinity pitchers are just good. They're not great. If you want to use them, they're here. Cade Horton, I think looks great, but I haven't personally used them. And then Matt Shaw and Anthony, I haven't used. So, it would be disingenuous for me to rank them very highly, having not used them, but statistically and from what I've seen from their swings, they should be good. So Adam Dunn is our first player here. Off rip, I'm thinking 4150, but he could easily jump into this next year. A very good DH. Don't really want to play him in the field unless that is at first base. Ottavino, solid, 21 to 30s, kind of a reliever tier. You can't put too much value on a reliever. There's value in being the best reliever, the best right-handed reliever, or the best left-handed reliever, but in general, relievers don't carry a ton of value. Leiter, this card's very good. I don't think I can say he's a top 10 card in the game. It's hard for a starter to be top 10 in the game, in my opinion. If a starter is a top 10 card, that means when you start the game with him, you have a higher chance of winning that game than losing. So think more dominant than a guy like Leiter. Leiter's going to go out there and shove and give you good outings almost every single time he goes out there. If you're on Hall of Fame, if you're on Legend, he's going to be one of the better pitching options. But I would not go out of your way to get this card. Give it a couple more weeks. You'll start to rack up some free cards through Tops Now and programs as they come out. And he'll basically be free to get there instead of having to spend a ton of stubs to get this card right now. McCutchen, a solid card. Really, the value from this card comes from how awesome he is against lefties. With there being so many dominant starting left-handed pitchers in the game, if you want to platoon McCutchen or even, just leave him in full-time, he's going to get 2 to 3 at-bats against a lefty a game, almost guaranteed. So he has good value in how he can hit lefties, but he is going to get scammed against righties with that low power. And his clutch isn't particularly great. It's all right, but it's not bad. Not bad, not great. Miller, very good lefty option. Basically Josh Hader on steroids. Just has insane through nines, has a nasty pitch mix. That sinker is very valuable on him. He is a great lefty specialist, assuming you want like a power pitching lefty instead of a like finesse lefty like Bummer or like Franco. And actually we are going to have to boot somebody off the list, because that being said, I do like Bummer a lot. I like him more than Franco. I think he makes the list. But I was kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel for like the 49 and 50 spots on this list. Pettit, easily a top 10 card in the game. If you are on Legend, he's probably going to take the mantle from like Randy and stuff as the best Legend pitcher. He's going to absolutely dot. He has great through nines, good pitch mix, especially for those higher difficulties. Hall of Fame and Legend, Pettit's going to be the go-to pitcher. Babe Ruth, very good as a position player or as a DH. As a pitcher, he's probably in the 41 to 50 range, if even on the list at all. Not a bad player, but not great. Yelly bombs, just getting a little dated, right? The swing's still good and the clutch is still good, but the power is getting a little behind the curve. The contact in general is getting behind the curve. The ability to not field the position well is getting a little behind the curve. As we kind of see that power scaling start to creep in, as most people are running 94, 95 overall cards at a lot of positions. A 91 overall Yelich isn't really cutting it at this point. Still very good, still very usable, but just not that top tier option like he was. Seager, easily a 11 to 20 range card, maybe even a 1 through 10 depending on how you like him. For me, he's probably a top 10 card in the game, but I don't have a lot of these bosses yet. I did want to put them on the list because they are going to start to become available. It may be only a niche group of players that get these cards, but I know personally that people are getting very close to unlocking these bosses. Bard, very good, very similar to Ottavino. If Ottavino's not your go-to righty, it's probably this Daniel Bard card. Two very good righties. They do struggle a little bit with control, but righty relief pitcher is a very, very thin spot in the game right now. Ed Matthews, great swing. Contacts are a little bit low. Power is very good, has a ton of quirks, plays a decent third base, and actually has good clutch. So if you want to argue he's higher, you can argue he's higher. We'll see where he ends up when I kind of finalize this list. But for right now, he's more or less there. Eddie Cabrera, this card's fine. I don't think he's great. He's definitely not nearly as dominant as he was years ago. Part of that is people just getting used to hitting sinkers. Outlier sinkers kind of get nerfed in general. Sinkers kind of get nerfed in general. But has a good pitch mix. He can still turn out some very good outings. He's just not a dominant starter like a lot of these other guys. Ernie, not a bad card by any means. Always has a good swing, has good hitting quirks, has good enough contact, hits good enough against lefties. And he plays one of the thinner positions in the game right now as a shortstop. Plus, he's very cheap, and a lot of people got him no sale last season, so I think it's worth it to have him on here. Brett, insane card. The power is a little low, but when you have every hitting quirk in the game, and then you have pretty much max out contact, and you play a good third base, he is a very, very top tier card. Hap fits in this 11 to 20 range. As far as switch hitter goes, for most people, he will be the best attainable one. Obviously, we are starting to get into that Jimmy Rollins type of territory where a lot of people will be getting him soon. But for now, Hap, for most people, is their best switch hitter. Can play second base, which is crazy value because even Rollins can't play second base. So as far as a switch hitter goes, one of the top tier options. Hits righties just as well as a card like Corey Seager does. Is a little bit deficient against lefties, but even then, I think he's like 90, 78 against lefties. So those are good numbers, especially when you have the handedness advantage all the time. Not a bad card at all. Jackie just lacks a little bit of power against, I believe it's lefties. I'll have to check. It could be righties. It is righty, so lacks a little bit of power against righties, but does have a really good swing. Always has great quirks. Probably fits more so in this end of this tier or beginning of this tier, but not a bad card by any means. And as far as a free card goes, one of the better ones you're going to get. Job, not a bad card. Very similar to Edward Cabrera. Cabrera's got better through nines. Job probably has the better pitch mix. So it's really up to you. Job's outlier is going to be more valuable because it's on the four seam. So a very good card. Little bit overpriced, you know, maybe he's not worth his price point just because it's very hard for people to get that pack at the moment. But in the future, look for him to be a great budget option, similar to somebody else on this list. DeGrom, very good card. Realistically, he probably fits more so in this 21 to 30 range. Right now, he's very good because he has really high through nines. And a lot of pitchers can't really compete with his high through nines at the moment. But I think he's going to be very reminiscent of the DeGrom we got last year, where we were like, uh-oh, he has a sinker. This is the best card ever. And he just kind of aged like milk. A lot of people are just very comfortable against DeGrom after seeing that all-star card for so many years. Really a two-pitch pitcher. He's got the outlier four seam and the hard slider. And then after that, you're throwing the circle change, which a lot of people sit back on very well. And the sinker, which he may have a glitch sinker. I'm not sure if his sinker is like glitched to where he throws it slower than what it says. But if he's throwing it the speed that it says he's throwing it, not really that great. Jarren Duran, very good card. Underrated card, I would say. Probably better than Jackie. Probably in this like McCutchen range, where if he's in your outfield, it's a solid pick. It's not a bad card. I love his swing. He's going to struggle a decent amount against lefties, and that kind of limits him. But he is a great righty basher. And I think he's only got a bronze shield in the field, but he's incredibly fast and he's got good reactions, so easily makes up for that. The Martian here, he's fine. The through nines are lackluster, but you can't deny the value of a switch hitter. He's still a very good card with a very good swing. And I've had this card do damage to me on the Hall of Fame, so you can definitely use him. The PCIs are going to be very small, especially if your timing's off. But overall, still a very good card and very usable. Candelario fits more so in the end of this tier. You can see he came out about the same time as Yelich, and he's getting about as dated as Yelich is. The thing that carries Candelario, other than being a switch hitter, obviously, is the clutch. He has like 106 clutch before you start putting parallels on him. If you put some parallels on him, then there's no reason to not be using this card, honestly, because you're looking at like 110 clutch with dead red and 90-90 power and contact. Honestly, he's probably more up here to where he's very equivalent to Ed Matthews. If you're comfortable lefty-lefty, you probably go Ed. If you need a switch hitter, you probably go Candelario. J-Raw, one of the better cards in the game, right? I've already said it multiple times. It's hard to find switch hitters at this point of the game, much less ones that have upper 90 speed with diamond defense at a premium position. Now, he is a midget, so, he won't be able to dive on everything. If you've been using like a Mookie at shortstop, then you know how that feels, especially coming off of Ellie being everybody's shortstop last year. So that kind of sucks he doesn't have second base as a secondary, but in general, one of the more valuable cards in the game at the moment. Joe Mauer would rank very high if you could guarantee that he sees a righty every game. You're not going to. He's going to get lefties more times than not. In my eyes, he's honestly more of a platoon option as a catcher at this point. If you want to leave him in lefty-lefty, he can, hit a double for you maybe, but he's going to struggle a lot lefty-lefty. He's going to get scammed, especially on higher difficulties where people are just spamming away sliders. It's going to be kind of tough. So John obviously has significantly better pitch mix than like a DeGrom does, but his through nines are starting to get very lackluster. He's starting to get hittable. On All-Star, not really noticeable, right? Because you pretty much always have a big PCI on All-Star. But when you start to see him on the Hall of Fame, when you start to see him on Legend, that's when it becomes obvious that he's fallen off a bit. Still has probably the best pitch mix out of any starter in the game, any pitcher in the game. But the through nines are falling behind. I think I have mine super fractured. He's got like 87 hits, and it's noticeable. He's starting to get barreled up a lot more, starting to give up more bloopers because people have bigger PCIs. So his time is coming. Eventually, he probably won't be in a lot of people's starting rotations coming soon. Polanco, not a bad card by any means. Really a poor man's Ian Happ. If you can't afford Happ, no reason you shouldn't have Polanco, especially if you have an emphasis and value on switch hitting. It's not going to get too much better than Polanco. Honestly, has a good swing. A lot of people think he has a bad one because his follow-through is ugly, but the swing itself is pretty good. JB Easy, Josh Bell, basically Candelario with worse clutch. So, rank him how you want to. Not a bad option by any means. Soto, I just can't possibly rank him significantly higher than Adam Dunn. Dunn has like more hitting quirks. Juan may have the better swing. Dunn makes more captain teams. Obviously, I wouldn't factor that in. So they're similar. They're both more or less DHs. You don't really want them in the field, but not bad cards. And if you really like Juan's swing, then obviously that kind of skew where you're putting him on the list. This Seager card has an awesome swing. Honestly, I used him. His swing is immaculate, but his stats are lackluster. not a bad card. And you probably will see him in a lot of people's lineups coming soon just because they're going to be getting him and they're going to see the 97 overall and think he's the best third baseman. I would take his brother over him. I think his brother has a better swing and I think he has better quirks. I'm pretty sure this Kyle card doesn't have really any quirks. He has dead red and first pitch, but I think Corey has significantly more quirks than that. I think his swing's better. The fact he plays up with inside edge, the fact he makes the Nolan team. Give me Corey over Kyle all day, but Kyle is not a bad card by any means. Larry Walker, another one of these program bosses. If you want to sit here and say he's better than George Brett, I'd hear that out. He's definitely not better than Rollins. And honestly, I think this is the order of the bosses so far. It's hard to put a lot of value on a pitcher. A lot of these other guys are very valuable, Walker and Brett, both lefties. Walker hits for a little more power. Brett's more contact, plays better defense, but Larry plays a more premium defensive position. So, you can go back and forth on who's better all day. They're both probably worse than Rollins. Mike Cameron, this is a hard card to rank. This is close to being like a top 10 card. He's very good. He could sneak into the back end of the top 10 if you really like his swing. Has breaking ball, has a lot of other decent quirks. Does not also have dead red. But honestly, having breaking ball is probably better than having dead red anyway. So do enjoy Mike Cameron. The defense he's going to play in center is going to be very valuable, especially coming off this being a lot of people's center fielder. These are two very similar cards. Trout will undoubtedly have a better swing. Trout has one of the best swings in the game every single year. But that reaction hurts. I have him super fractured. He cost me a lot of runs in center field. Still has very good speed. And the fact that he has inside edge makes him play up every day. He basically has a positive 5-star inside edge every day. So that's nice to work with. He will definitely have more power than Mike Cameron. But Mike is going to probably hit for better contact. Definitely has better clutch. And he's going to field his position significantly better than like Mike will. Mike Trout, I guess. Speaking of another Mike. Piazza's very good. You see him on basically every top 50 players team, and a lot of them have him batting third or fourth or fifth in their lineup, very crucial parts of their lineup. And a lot of that has to do with how many good lefty starters are in the game, but also has to do with the fact he makes Nolan team and the fact that his swing is significantly better than it has been in the past. This is not the Piazza from a couple years ago. He is much improved, and he's very good at this point of the game. Statistically, probably the best catcher, especially if you're on a higher difficulty. Mitch Garver, not a bad card. I think he fits in here where he probably won't hit one side better than Joe Mauer hits righties, but he's more well-balanced. You don't necessarily have to platoon him. On All-Star and Hall of Fame, he may be your best catcher option. Probably not a legend guy, but so that probably bumps Jackie down, which is fine because he's a free card, and SDS has very clearly not put a huge emphasis on giving out good free cards. So, Jackie falls in at the back end of the list. Mookie, not a bad card by any means. Supercharged and super fractured. He's probably the best card on the game right now. But he's not going to be supercharged forever. We'll have to kind of see how the roster update affects him. For me personally, I think he's a top 10 card in the game. Even before he got supercharged, I was hitting better with him than I was with like Mike Trout. And a lot of that has to do with the quirks. Mookie has almost like every hitting quirk in the game. He's a shortstop now, which is always a weak position in Diamond Dynasty. So being able to have such a premium bat with such a good swing, play shortstop with good defense, you get him super fractured, he gets diamond defense at shortstop. That's going to get you a lot of better animations. I think he's probably a top 10 player. Another top 10 player, back-to-back, Castellanos. This card is crazy good against lefties. And I'd say he's above average against righties. The clutch is a little bit low relative to his other contacts, but he can't be great at everything. Not a bad fielder. He's very slow. I will say that 61 speed, I think it is very noticeable. But the reaction's good enough, honestly. And if you can superfractor him, that's going to get even better. Really, you see him in almost every top player's lineup because of how good he is against lefties. There's so many good lefty starting pitchers in the game right now. it just increases his value so much. You see it on the marketplace where the demand is going up, up, up for him, and there's just no supply at all. They add him to vault packs, but either people aren't pulling them or he's not coming out of those vault packs. So he actually gained value. I think he's at like 150k. He could even go up. But if you are going to get this card, I would have him out of your inventory by this Friday, because we are getting the show classic program. Fingers crossed we'll get at least a free pack of the pack with him and like Trammell and some of the other ones, but who really knows this year with SDS. But just purely rankings wise, I think he's easily a top 10 player. And why not do Ryan Braun right after? Basically Castellanos, but arguably has a worse swing, arguably has better hitting quirks, but also plays slightly worse defense. So Cassie's a right fielder, Braun's a left fielder. If you want to run them both, you can. That's not going to be the best defensive outfield in the game, but you will never struggle against Randy or John again. These two guys absolutely mash lefties. I don't think I can put Braun as a top 10 card, but he's another guy where you see him in a lot of top 50 guys teams for a reason, and it's because he mashes against lefties. Noah Schultz, very good card. A different kind of change of pace over like a lot of the guys we see. More similar to like an Al Leiter than a guy like a Randy or something like that. More of a finesse lefty, a pitch to contact lefty. He's a little janky with his release, and his sinker's actually glitched. He throws it like 3 to 4 miles an hour slower than he's supposed to, which is actually a good thing because it gets you a lot more rollovers. But very good card. I think he's the best team affinity pitcher by far. You give him like super fractured. I think he's looking at like 104 to like 106 hits through 9, which is top tier right now. Oswaldo, a very decent card. It really depends on how much value you put on switch hitting. As far as switch hitters go, he's one of the better ones you can buy off the market other than Ian Happ. So a good card, can play a ton of positions, has a good swing. So there's a lot of value on this card. He is quite expensive just because the supply is so low, but you can argue that he's good value relative to what you need because he has great reaction. So that means you can move him around wherever you want to. And obviously he's a switch hitter with great clutch. I think he has like 104 clutch. So not a bad card by any means. Skeens, I think he's fallen a little bit. I think I would probably prefer Job and Cabrera over him, but he is very close to them. He's still very good. His outlier still doesn't really work. He can throw 100, maybe even 101 if you're lucky enough. But it's not true outlier. He's not hitting 102, he's not hitting 103, and he's not even throwing 100 consistently, which really hurts him, especially on lower difficulties. On Legend, you could even make the argument it makes him better. But on Hall of Fame and All-Star, it really hurts to not be able to just rely on the outlier fastball to blow people off the plate. So it's unfortunate. Rafi P, not a bad card by any means. I think I would probably put him more in this range, but I would be fine with him sneaking into the back end of this. On the Nolan team, you can probably make the argument he's a top 20 card without the Nolan team, which is how I'm ranking him here. Still very good. You look at him, the card does not look outstanding on paper. He actually looks like a worse Matt Olson, but his swing is so good. He has basically every hitting quirk in the game. He obliterates balls. Most top 50 guys really enjoy his swing. It's just a matter of how comfortable you are lefty-lefty. Randy, still a top 10 guy in the game. If you're on All-Star, if you're on Hall of Fame, you're not going to find a better pitcher than Randy Johnson. It's just kind of relative. If you're on Legend, you're probably playing guys that have seen him a lot. His hits through 9 are starting to get a little bit dated. They're in a much better spot than a guy like John because he came out basically an entire month after John came out. But he's going to get there and he's going to age worse. He's going to slowly creep down this list. But at the end of the day, it's still Randy Johnson and he's still very good. Rich Arulia. I think he fits more so in this tier, and we'll probably bump down a guy like Schultz, and then we'll bump down a guy like probably Mauer, just because Mauer's just so bad against lefties. You're really platooning him. When you're ranking him relative to his value as a starting catcher, he's not that great. But if you want to platoon him with a guy like Piazza or like Joe Torre, then obviously he's great. But on his own, he can't hit lefties. Fingers, very good, very similar to like Bard and Ottavino. For me personally, I'd probably drop Fingers down. He's been really good for me, but I don't think he's super great. I don't see him as being unhittable. That probably drops down a guy like Josh Bell, who doesn't really have the clutch that a guy like Candelario does. And you can argue his swing's not as good. Acuna goes in this tier. At the moment, he's kind of in jeopardy. Depending on how the next live series update goes, he could get significantly worse. So, you know, keep that in mind relative to this list. If he loses a bunch of power because he's only hit 1 home run so far this year, then be aware of that. He could be going down. Satchel Paige. This card is very similar to DeGrom in my eyes. An outlier, 4-seam, righty starting pitcher that's going to work off his hard slider. And then Satchel always has the gimmick of throwing the screwball. Doesn't really make him any better than DeGrom. Arguably, it doesn't make him worse either. Not a bad card by any means, but also not really messing with like that top tier of starter. Definitely the worst boss pick, easily in my eyes. So who's going to drop out of this tier? I think it's probably Miller, because I think I prefer Bummer. If you want that more power pitching lefty specialist, and it probably is Miller. And then that probably drops a guy like, it's got to be one of the pitchers. It's tough. Both of them might end up getting dropped, but it's going to be Job, I think. Cabrera, just always, that sinker is going to eat people up. It's going to be a hard card to deny. So Taylor Trammell, basically the exact same card as Jarren Duran. Lacks a little power. You can argue his swing's better. I think he's faster. So two very similar cards. They're basically the exact same card, to be honest. Matzik, one of the better lefty specialists in the game right now. We are going to have to kind of readjust some of these tiers. There might actually be too many cards on here because it seems kind of weird, because we've only got 4 spots in this top tier available. Jordan is still top tier. He's kind of slipping a little bit just because of how many great lefties there are in the game. Basically, you're having to hit lefty with them multiple at-bats a game, if not all of them. So that's really tough for him, but he's still very good. And if he ever gets a righty, he's going to go crazy. Willie Mays, super good card. We'll focus on the order here in a second or two. Judge, still very good as a DH. And then we actually get to promote somebody here. I think it's going to be Ottavino, because relative to all the other righties relief pitchers in the game right now, I think he's probably the best by far. And then we get to promote again here. I'm thinking Raleigh Fingers to kind of take the place. Yeah. So we'll go Raleigh to kind of take the place of where Ottavino was. If you want to argue Bard's better than Ottavino, I'll hear that. If you want to argue Fingers is better than Ottavino, I'll hear that. Not bad cards by any means. And now we actually have to kind of sweat these tiers. So you can see, I actually miscalculated. There's one too many cards on here. So we're going to cut somebody to the honorable mentions. Out of these cards is probably Yelich, just because you gotta be sparing with where you use your lefties in your lineup. That's something you gotta think about. You don't want to have too many lefties, because like I've been saying, you're going to see a lefty starting pitcher almost every game online. And if not, then eventually at some point they're going to bring in a lefty specialist to deal with that player in the lineup. So I think using your lefties in better spots other than Christian Yelich is probably what I would advise personally. So order-wise, I think the worst card in this tier is probably Jackie. I think he's probably a little low. Skeens is very comparable to Job. It's just Job's outlier actually works, so that easily makes him better. Dunn, I probably prefer over Soto, but not over Polanco. I probably prefer Polanco over Dominguez. And then Mauer, like I said, is hard to rank because really he's a platoon catcher at this point. Eddie Cabrera probably goes up here. He's right-handed Noah Schultz, but he has an outlier on his sinker, so not bad. Candelario is one of the better players in this tier. I think Ed Matthews is very similar. I would probably prefer Duran and Trammell over a guy like McCutcheon at this point, but that's just me personally. And then Mitch Garver's not a bad card either, so you can't go too wrong with that tier. This tier, we're probably looking at DeGrom's definitely the best player in this tier. And then I would probably argue it's Bummer, probably Cabrera, probably Raleigh, Bard. I love Bard. Bard does insane work for me out of the bullpen. And then that's probably the rest of this tier. 11 through 20, some of the best players in the game right here. For me, Seager's going to go up. I'm going to prefer Mike Cameron over Mike Trout, but I still prefer Mike Trout over a guy like Acuna probably. Hap, I probably prefer over Acuna. And then a lot of these other guys are probably hard to rank. I don't think a relief pitcher can go higher than a lot of these other guys. But Judge is a DH. At the end of the day, if you're using Judge, it's as a DH, probably on the Nolan team. If you wanted to like platoon DH him with like Yordan Alvarez, wouldn't be a bad idea. And then the top 10. So I've kind of been structuring this more or less how I want it to be. Mookie, after the supercharge expires, will probably be the worst player in this top 10. I would probably prefer Yordan. Probably number 1. I think he's the scariest hitter in the game right now. He's not bad. Castellanos, you can argue, is even better just because he does it against lefties. But Babe is also very good, and he's actually been hitting very good for me right now, so this is really tough. Larry Walker, I think, is probably the worst player here, in my opinion. And then we probably will go Mookie. We'll probably go Willie Mays. Willie is very valuable because, yeah, his swing isn't great, and his hitting stats aren't the best. But the outfield defense he provides, he's basically just better Mike Cameron. So not a bad card there. And then I don't think I put Randy any higher because he's going to get worse over time. And I think for the most part, I am fairly happy with that list. I think these are the best cards in the game, the best hitters in the game at the moment. And honestly, nah, we'll leave it. We'll leave it because a lot of people do not enjoy Corey Seager. For me personally, he's like my best hitter right now. But that may just be me. You might not enjoy his swing like that. So this is our top 50. You can see our honorable mentions here. I will try to link the tier list. I'm not sure if it'll save or not. Showzone's kind of been on the fritz recently. That should say, okay, I guess it's kind of backwards. Here's our 41 through 50 spots, our 31 through 40 spots, our 21 through 30 spots, our top 20 cards in the game. I should have just called this top 20. Not necessarily in order though, because Showzone didn't want to save it in order. So that sucks. So I just sat here and ordered the cards for no reason. If you guys do want to know the order, you can scrub through the video. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it. So we will be updating this. We will keep it updated throughout the year as they drop content. It's looking like we get a substantial content drop about every month in terms of team affinity. And we get like one new monthly card and some new store packs. So that's not ideal, but you know, it is more or less the time schedule from last year. I did update this about every month. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this does help you field a more competitive lineup. Until next time, peace.